Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's panel discussion on personal statements. My name is Miguel Sanchez, and I am the Associate Director of Admissions at Pace Law. And it is with great pleasure to be here today and be your moderator for this panel. Today, I'm so happy and fortunate to have three fantastic panelists who will share their insights on personal statements. Each of them is terrific, and they're going to introduce themselves. They're going to tell you where they're from, why they got into admissions, and we're going to then continue the conversation on personal statements. So with that being said, I'm going to start with Eduardo Chavez. Eduardo, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Eddie Chavez, and Director of Admissions at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas. I graduate from St. Mary's as well, and a first-generation law student. So I certainly feel like I love to talk about these things, especially to fellow first-gen students, especially to fellow Latino students. So I'm happy to be here.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We're going to go on. Miguel, can you please introduce yourself, my tocayo?
Hi, everybody. My name is Miguel Hernandez. I'm Dean of Admissions at Campbell School of Law in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been in higher ed admissions for, this is my 24th year. I'm also first gen. So I've been working with a lot of different types of students over the course of the year, but you don't have to necessarily be a first gen student to apply to law school. Just the same, we have, you are fortunate to be with this group because this is a wonderful group of colleagues. So I appreciate you sharing good things, but you got to include yourself in that too, man.
Terrific. Thank you, Miguel. And we also have Josue. Josue, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Josue Jimenez. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions at Duke University School of Law. I actually attended Campbell Law for law school and graduated in 2017. Went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for undergrad, practiced for a few years, and now I've been in law school admissions for almost 4 years. Eddie and I actually were in the same newcomers class. So we've known each other from the beginning. And so it's been great to be here with you guys today, and I'm excited to talk about this.
Terrific. As I said, my name is Miguel Sanchez, and I am originally from Mexico. I went to SUNY Purchase in New York, and I completed my bachelor's in legal studies. At the time, I was thinking about going to law school. After that, I started working at Pace Law, and I completed a master's degree in public administration. And just this past May, I completed my MBA in finance at Pace. So first generation college and graduate student. And I've been working at Pace for now 8 years. Love it. It's one of the, not one, but probably the best job I've had. Thank you all for being here. So we have viewers who are just starting their law school journey application. Some of them, maybe they've been thinking about it for some months. And the personal statement is a critical component of the law school admissions process. And schools have different standards, they have different guidelines, but generally speaking, the personal statement is your opportunity to tell the admissions committee what makes you unique. So today, we will dive and unpack what is a personal statement. Again, we know that our viewers are either just starting the law school process, and some are more knowledgeable and have been thinking about it for a while. But let's start really from the very, very beginning. So what is a personal statement, and what makes a personal statement necessary for law school applicants? And why don't we start with Eduardo, and then we can go off from there.
Sure. I believe you're right, Miguel. Every law school has its own personal statement prompt or directions. So always, whenever you're looking at any particular school that you're applying to, is to be sure that you're addressing the prompt. I think a lot of admissions people who write these prompts, there's some thought that goes into the application every year. know that that's kind of a signal. What they're looking for is already kind of in the language. So if there is a specific prompt already given, or even if it sounds pretty broad but still has these words, certainly try to follow them. But generally, I think a personal statement is just a form of expressing yourself. It's your way to kind of tell your story in your own words, through your own voice. And so it's a narrative that you have to kind of wield, and that's really your elevator pitch. Otherwise, without getting to know admissions people directly, this is the way that you get to really show people who you are, and hopes to get admitted to law school.
Terrific. Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, it's your interview. It's an opportunity for you to talk directly to the folks who are evaluating the whole of your application for admissions. But it's not just that, it's your writing skills. It's your writing skills demonstrated, because a big facet of law school is your reading and your writing. First year, you're going to read and write a lot. Second year, read and write a lot. Third year, you're going to read. In your career, you're going to read and write a lot. So demonstrating those basic skills, attention to detail, and those kind of things. One of the things a lot of people don't think that we evaluate candidates on is your logic, your thinking process. And that's really, really important, because a lot of that comes out in the personal statement. So before you even start that, there's a lot of little pieces to start with. And that, first of all, is the perspective. And that is, it's an interview. It's an interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I'll add is highlight the importance of it, because really this is where if you haven't heard already a ton, you're gonna hear it a ton as you go through the law school admissions process, and that's the holistic aspect of it. In that this is that part, where we start getting into that holistic aspect where we go beyond just the LSAT and the GPA, and oftentimes that's why I say this is just as important as the numbers are, because this can really swing the decision either way. If you have someone with great numbers, but the personal statement lacks any kind of effort or attention to detail or anything that Eddie or Miguel just mentioned, it can really make that decision go the opposite way of what the numbers might indicate, and vice versa. If the numbers maybe are a little bit lower than we would normally look at, depending on what school you're at, but you have a great personal statement, it's a very compelling story, then that will make us want to advocate for that person regardless of the numbers. So it can really make a huge difference and impact on the final decision. So you want to make sure that you're spending a lot of time on that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, one of the things that Miguel mentioned about the logic and the thinking process, that's something we evaluate while reviewing or reading your personal statement. Something that just came to mind as we were talking, we advise applicants to tell us, why do you want to be a lawyer? We know that you want to go to law school, and that's obvious, right? Because you're filling the application, you took the LSAT, etc. But why do you want to be a lawyer? Many times we hear or we read that. I give you just a very quick example. Some time ago, I read a statement that said, "I want to help people," and that's great. But there are many ways to help people. And so you should be specific about why or how is it that with a law degree, you are going to help people. And in your personal statement is one of those ways to do it. I know we briefly touched on your writing ability, mechanics, organization, etc. And this is an important part. What resources are available to help law school applicants with their personal statements? There are certain organizations, websites, or places. Where should applicants look to for help when writing a personal statement? And whoever wants to start, why don't we start with Miguel, since Eddie started first.
I think that the best resource for anything related to law school is the law school itself. So call the law schools. Now, if you're the type of person that struggles with like reaching out to some stranger, that's going to be tough for you in law school. So you got to shake that a little bit and start by communicating with the law school about the personal statement. I have a lot of colleagues right now who have retired and gone to be independent college consultants who charge $20,000 per student, by the way. And you have the opportunity to get the same information for free from us. So why not just call us? So call us and ask us about what makes a good applicant. You know, make a meeting so that don't just cold call us so that you can make a meeting so we can take the time to sit there and tell you exactly what you need to know, because we're good at it. We try to understand you and what fits best for you. So reach out to the schools is my best advice. Reach out and find out.
Thank you, Miguel. Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, if you're still in undergrad, a great resource that I wish I would have used when I was going through this process was the Writing Center. So if your university has a Writing Center, that's literally what they're there for, to help you write an essay or a statement. And so in your case, sometimes people think they have to have like a law student or a lawyer or something read their personal statement. They don't, literally could be anyone, and they're probably better because they're actually focusing on the writing aspect of it, which you need to pay attention to. And a lot of times, lawyers or law students might read things or view things in a very different way than what we're looking for. And so I think the Writing Center is a great resource to use. And if you don't have one, pre-law advisor, of course, you have them available, or just someone that you trust to read your statement if you don't know anyone. Just to say, because sometimes all you need to confirm is, does this make sense? What is the message that you got out of this? Because if it doesn't make sense to them, it might not make sense to us. So don't feel like it has to be a legal professional for that.
And I'll just say that I agree completely. I mean, it's no coincidence that all of us kind of have the same thing to say about resources and reaching out to law schools personally for the personal statement. I know that a lot of our institutions too have open houses or admissions events where we kind of center around the application and all its components. So always look out for that. If you don't want to personally reach out, at least attend something like that to kind of get a good idea of what to look for in the personal statement.
Just, I wanted to add one more thing. Miguel,
Absolutely.
and that is that when a lot of schools say, why do you want to be a lawyer? And so many different prospective students have heard that, and I think to the point where they really don't know how to respond to that. And so you got to give yourself time to think about why that is. And one of the things that we did when we changed our prompt was to be a little more specific about, what is the thing, person, or circumstance that struck a nerve in you that made you want to do this, that made you say, I have to do this, not I want to do this, I have to do this. What is the inspiration? Because if you understand something that inspires you, then you can write a good personal statement. Other thing is, when you take apart the prompt, make it make sense for you. Somebody told me a while back in the audience, well, isn't that dumbing it down? And I'm like, is it dumbing it down or is it smartening it up for you to understand what it's saying? Because a lot of language that's on an actual application is not typical language that we would see. It's language that's been ruminated over and all this stuff, and everybody wants to make it really tight and beautiful and lawyerly and all this stuff, but it doesn't make sense to the average person. So make it make sense to you so that you can be inspired to write an excellent personal statement.
Well, that's terrific. And as you were saying that, it also ties into what Josue mentioned and what Eddie is, and I see this at least once during the cycle, probably more than once actually. And that is, many applicants use legal jargon, thinking that using that type of language is going to, I don't want to say impress the admissions counselor, but it's not their voice, it's not who they are. And so it's really important, as you all three mentioned, to be authentic and to lean on the resources available, whether it's a mentor or the Writing Center if you're still in college, which, by the way, as Josue mentioned, I should have visited the Writing Center more often than I did. That's another story. With that being said, something else that came up that I think it's important is, before COVID, you had to in many instances, go to the school to learn more about the school. You had to visit and etc. But now, as we navigated through COVID, we are using video conferencing in a much more deeper way. So now you can connect with law school admissions professionals and get to know them and learn how the school is going to help you achieve your goals. So we talked already about what should be your voice, how to find help. And this is another broad question. What should not be included in a personal statement? Again, we talked a little bit about jargon, but what else should not be in a personal statement? And whoever wants to tackle that question, please go ahead.
Well, this is my favorite question all the time about personal statements, what not to include, because there's a lot not to include. But I think, let's narrow it down a little bit. I think I'll start with that, is we really want to contextualize why you want to go to law school, right? We talked about why you have to go to law school. And so I think a lot of times when people hear personal statement, we get a lot, because we know we review tons and tons of applications, we get very personal statements and we get very general personal statements. And I think those are two no-nos. So the very personal is to create a very large sob story or a narrative that really invokes like a tear-jerking kind of moment where they want the reader to really feel pretty persuaded that this is a case where we need to take this person in and shelter them and give them the best law school education experience because of their tragic story. And while sharing a tragic story isn't on its own a bad thing, it can be the center of the narrative of the personal statement to the point where you never get to address why you have to go to law school. Same thing with a very general statement. Sometimes people take that personal statement wording very broadly and talk about their entire lifespan, starting from when they were born. And I've gotten applications, personal statements that talk about that cold December morning when they were born in such and such hospital in such and such city, where it has nothing to do with getting into law school. Really contextualize the 2 to 3 pages usually for a personal statement centered around your current moment, why you want to go into law school at present. And that's where I'll stop.
How did you know I was born on a cold December morning?
As was I,
Yeah.
but
So couple of things. The first is quotes. Don't use quotes because it's taking up space that is designed for your voice, not somebody else's. And if it's a quote that you're so inspired by that you must, quote Gandhi, that we have, trust me, we have not seen Gandhi more than 500,000 times. So we need to see it more. Don't do that. Don't quote other people. If a quote so inspires you that you have to use it, talk about what in that quote inspires you, not the quote itself. But I would generally steer away from quotes. And if you're going to talk about somebody, a person who inspired you, try not to make them the central focus of your personal statement. Always go back to looking back at what you've written and say, because sometimes you just get off and start writing, but you got to go back and look at it and say, am I distracting from my own focus of myself? It is not absolutely 100% not arrogant or pompous for you to speak about yourself. If you're writing a personal statement with humility, if you're naturally a humble person, it will come out, so trust that you writing about yourself, while unusual, is a subject just like any other subject that you've ever studied in school. In fact, it probably should be your favorite subject, and so you're going to talk to a lot of people throughout your experience in law school about your speech, your story, where you came from, and all these things. You're going to encapsulate those things. So start now. Other thing is people don't do is don't hit the admissions committee in the face. You got to hit them in the face. I know it sounds really strange, but it's the opposite of writing about the water was shimmering on a lake on the cold winter morning and stuff like that. Just get to it. Tell these guys what it is that you, or why it is that you're doing this. What, you know, don't wait until the second or third paragraph to tell us why you're doing this, because it's not suspenseful. It's like, okay, get to it, you know, and we really do want you to just get to it. So I want to be a lawyer because bam, just hit him in the face.
Yeah, no, and building off of what Miguel and Eddie said, you know, I think you have to be careful with if you're picking a specific incident or series of events or a person of why you want to go to law school, you know, just move on from that quickly, because build on that. Don't let that become, you know, the first page of your entire personal statement. You know, tell us the why and then move on and say, and this is what I did in undergrad, or this is what I hope to do in law school afterwards, because that's what we're really getting to. Because then if not, by the end of the statement, we'll know a lot about that specific moment in your life or about this specific person in your life that influenced you, but we won't know about anything else that you've done or that has motivated you or has confirmed for you the desire to want to go to law school. And that's really what the personal statement is. You have a very small window for us to get to know you as an individual. So don't waste that space on just one specific part of your life, especially if you're applying to a school that has a very hard limit on pages. You know, for us, for example, at Duke, we'll say, you know, it's 2 is the recommended. You know, I say tell me that 2.5 is acceptable once you get past the 2.5 marker. But there are some schools that won't read, they'll have a hard cut. I will say 2 pages is it. Anything after that second page is not getting read. So you have to be mindful of those things as well.
Again, it's very important to call the admissions office and find out what are the requirements. Each school has their own guidelines. I just want to add one thing before I touch on optional essays, and that is when talking about what not to include. If you're going to include the school's name in the personal statement or a program or clinic, etc., of that particular school in your essay, please, 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 please do not forget to edit if you're applying to more than one school. I can't tell you how many times I read a statement and I know we don't have the program. I just know it. I mean, it helps that I work here, right? We don't have it. So just be careful. Be careful if you want to be that specific that you name the school and the program that you edit. And similarly, if you're going to do that as a strategy to have that, and usually, you know, over time, you know that it's a template. You know, they have the paragraph with that call out. Make sure that you do it in a way that it flows, that it's not just something rubber stamped, because it reads awkward. So those are just my 2 cents on what not to include. So optional essays, again, we go back. Each school has guidelines as far as essays and optional essays. So can anyone start us off? And maybe you can start us off with this one. First of all, does Duke have an optional essay? And what are some optional essay topics or prompts that our viewers should know about?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this is where schools vary the most when it comes to optional essays, just because some have them, some don't at all. We do. So this year, though, they're different from what they've been even last year because of the Supreme Court decision over the summer. You know, we don't have an optional diversity statement anymore. So what's been replaced is a second required statement in the form of a short answer. And so you'll have a required personal statement and then a required short answer statement. And you have 6 prompts that you can pick from. You have to do at least one, no more than 2, 250 to 500 words. And then our first optional essay has stayed the same, and that's the why Duke statement. And so I think of the optional statements, that's the most common, and so we've maintained that. And so that's really the purpose of that, is to give you a space so that you don't have to pack everything into your personal statement, so that you have extra space to talk about why you want to go to law school, what you've done up to this point in your life. And now in this why Duke statement, you have the opportunity to expand on and why and how does Duke help you accomplish the goals that you have or in your career. Why do you want, what about Duke, you know, attracts you as a law school potential? So that's really what that space is there for.
Perfect. And same for Eddie. Any optional essays that your school requires, or any thoughts on that?
Sure. We don't require per se optional statements, but they are welcome. Again, it's your chance to continue your narrative. But of course, be concise, just like the personal statement. Be direct and succinct in what you're trying to communicate. Historically, we've had diversity statements come in. St. Mary's University is a private Catholic university in the middle of Texas, South Texas. So it's a very heavily Hispanic population in the area. And so, just historically, we're a Hispanic serving institution. So many times do we get diversity statements, and, our policy still remains that we welcome, different, addenda that addresses that. So certainly being able to kind of communicate your own ideas, your background, how you define diversity, how you define your adversity if you've struggled through school in undergrad or other environments, these things are something that you can also address if it doesn't come up naturally in the personal statement.
Thank you, Eddie. Miguel, anything did you want to add to that?
Yeah, we don't have a separate diversity statement, but the Supreme Court did us a huge favor this year. And so what we did was we actually folded the language that the Supreme Court afforded us to give students that choose to apply to their personal statement elements of discussing their lived experiences and how that point of view contributes to the classroom or to the practice of law. Those things to us are really, really important. I'm really happy that our admissions committee sat down with me earlier this month and actually in August, and we had a very in-depth discussion about this, and they were in full agreement. And so we were able to add this to our prompt. So we're putting it front and center. And I think some schools out there are just kind of staying where they normally are, and that's cool. Everybody does their thing, but definitely call the schools just to make sure. But at the same time, it doesn't exclude you from including those things in your personal statement. So, we've been given permission by the powers that be to do that. So we're like, cool, let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. The recent Supreme Court decision has shifted many of the optional statements at PACE. We used to have a diversity statement. We no longer require it. We now ask applicants to explain why PACE, and that's is also very helpful because it really narrows down to PACE and the person. So on that note, and again, this is something that I've seen it's sort of a weird balance, so to speak. Some applicants use the addenda as a continuation of their personal statement, but what are your thoughts on that? Should applicants be referring back to the personal statement in the other addenda? Should they be writing something completely different? I know that some schools have certain requirements, but I was wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
I like it because for us, at least the way that it comes up for us is personal statement first, and then this year it'll be the short answers, and then it'll be the optional essay. And so that way I would have already read the personal statement in the short answers by the time I get to the Why Duke essay if you choose to submit one. And so it's fine to refer back, so that way you're being more concise, like Eddie said, and not having to repeat the same point. You can just say, as I mentioned in my personal statement, this is that, and then move on to what you're trying to say in your Why Duke essay. So I'm fine with it, but that's just us. I do.
We the addendum, and I think that the admissions committee on our end likes to look at it as context. So for example, if your grades are up and down, if you've taken an LSAT and you've taken it several times, and your last score is the highest, remember that the rule is that one of the things that we look at is your logic. So what did you do to improve? If you were working through your grades and you struggled and had an experience that contributed to your grades plummeting, what was that? And what did you do to formulate a comeback? Not just talk about what happened, but what you did to formulate a comeback. I need to say that again. I need to say that again. You have a circumstance that you struggled with. Tell us about the circumstance, but tell us what you did, the step process that you took to formulate a comeback, because that's the logic that we're looking for. How do you solve problems?
Well, that is terrific advice. I mean, that is already thinking like a lawyer and sort of flows into your application. Eddie, anything that you would like to add?
No, I agree completely. I think that's right. If you're concise with your addenda, if you want to address previous grade drops, maybe a route that's not traditional completion of your 4-year undergraduate education, or missed semesters or years. These things are certainly something you can give context to in an addenda. But I would say not to be, overly cautious, because certainly you'd want to address things that are very evident, but always check with the university that you're applying to, the law school you're applying to, as far as LSAT scores or GPA medians, because sometimes we get applicants who will, want to address a low GPA, and perhaps for some institutions that might be necessary if their median GPA is a little higher. But for others that you apply to, you may not always have to include an addenda addressing that. It almost kind of shines a negative light on something that maybe we would have just kind of overlooked in general, because we're not really that, worried as this institution's admissions office at that particular GPA or that particular LSAT score. So always just check to see which school you're applying to and what their LSAT and GPA medians are, and whether that merits an addenda to address those things.
Yes, I agree with you. I have to say that at PACE, there's a couple of sort of things we keep in mind and we advise. And one of them is, especially for applicants who have had a non-traditional, so to speak, I hate using that, but a non-traditional path where they did not go to law school right after undergrad. Maybe they worked as a paralegal, had a family, you name it. And so there might be a change in their grades, in their work experience. We advise the applicants to write an addendum to fill any gaps. Don't leave it up to the admissions officer to fill in the gap for you, because that may not be a good thing. You want to be upfront and you want to address, as Miguel said, this is what happened. This is the comeback. And that's who I am now. And that's the same attitude I bring to, and the same, the same attitude I bring to law school. So that is what we advise. Don't leave gaps. At the same time, as Addie mentioned, maybe not so much irrelevant, but that may also bring out questions that you perhaps it wasn't necessary to bring. So again, we go back to contact the school. I know that during the year, there are fairs, there are events where you can visit schools or representatives at different events. So check your calendar because there will be some events in the future where you can meet admissions officers, and certainly virtually as well. So just talking more about who can help you. I know we talked about some resources, but would you advise applicants to reach out to alumni? And what are some other ways that you can do that? Whether it's the school's alumni network, or maybe people you work with. How would you navigate it? How would you ask somebody to help you with a personal statement? Let me put it that way. And whoever wants to take that first, please go ahead.
I don't know if I'm going to be controversial, but I'm going to say no. Don't reach out to alumni to help you with your personal statement. I think that a lot of alumni are helpful, sure, certainly, but for many other things, maybe not the personal statement resource go to. As Miguel mentioned, certainly go to the admissions officers directly. They're the ones that are in the know. They created the policy, they overview the policy, and they're the ones that are the main person that you probably should head to for personal statement advice. Now, as Josue mentioned, I think you can always have an extra set of eyes to look over your personal statement in a way to help kind of make sure that formally and technically it looks good and polished, but not necessarily in advice for content of like what maybe admissions people would be looking for. So yes, they got into law school. Yes, they finished law school, but it doesn't mean that they know exactly how to get into law school at present. So things change throughout. And so, you know, alumni are helpful in many other ways, but not, I wouldn't say the personal statement. What do you guys think?
I was gonna say a lot of times they don't even know why they got in these, so it's not necessarily the best resource for that either. No, I think they're definitely helpful, like for their experience whenever they were in law school. You got some young alumni that will be a little bit more relevant than someone that graduated 20 years ago. But I think when it comes to the personal statement aspect, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting that on what to write or what to include, because like Miguel mentioned earlier, it's a personal statement. So I can't necessarily, even I can't tell you like this is what you need to focus on, or this is what you don't need to focus on. Like it's up to you what you want to discuss and what you want to emphasize in that statement. So I don't think an alumni or anyone else should be necessarily telling you what to focus on in your statement.
Yeah, I think that everybody here touched on the importance of the one resource that's absolutely critical in this whole thing. That's you, okay? If you have not, or you feeling like your writing skills may not be what they need to be, but you're somewhere near graduating college, guess what? They are where they need to be, and you need to up your game if you're coming to law school for sure. So no time like the present to start exercising those writing skills, but you cannot write something about a book until you read it. So the first thing that you need to do is introspect, look inside of yourself, take the time to look inside of yourself, stand on that pinnacle of accomplishments that you've had to this point. If you're a junior in college, or you're a rising sophomore, or you're a senior, stand on that pinnacle and look around and look at all the things that you've accomplished, right? Because you've accomplished a lot already. And if you think your life is vanilla, guess again, because if you just take a little bit of time to think about yourself, and if you're a good storyteller, here's what I would suggest to candidates who struggle writing a personal statement. First of all, take a good month or two just to introspect and get your ideas about why it is that you're doing this. And secondly, tell it to people. Lastly, everybody has a phone, so everybody has a voice recorder on their phone. So take your voice recorder on your phone in a moment of peace and clarity. Once you have your understanding of what you want to say, go in your car, go for a drive, press record, and say, why in God's green earth do you want to be a lawyer? And speak it 5-10 minutes, and then transcribe it word for word on a Word document. It's going to look really hinky. I mean, ahs, ums, pauses, everything, just load it, right? That is the foundation of a good raw personal statement. If you're not sure how to start it, maybe that's a good way to do it. You're going to see a couple of things. You got to leave it alone for a little bit. You got to let it bake. So give it a week or two, go back and look at it, and you're going to see the substance of your personal statement in there. The gold is going to be in there. And it's written in a conversational tone. So you're actually talking to people because you told the story. So that's a little different from what we would typically hear a candidate trying to use high-minded academic speak. Don't speak a language. I think Eddie said it earlier. Don't speak a language that you don't speak, because then it just is, it's another person. And I think Josue putting it out there that alumni may not be the best person, because different people looking at your writing piece over different stages are going to give you different pieces of advice, and it's going to dilute your stuff. So my advice to you is, if you show it to somebody, polish it. Polish it as tightly as you can. 10 good drafts. Come on, Miguel, 10 good drafts. Yes, 10 good drafts of your personal statement, and look it over in detail. And when you're done, then you show it to people, because you want to make people look at it and you want it to sing. That's when you show it to somebody you really care about. And if their response is emotion, send it.
That is very good. I like that piece. There's an emotional response, then you are getting close. That is very good advice. So I know we've covered a lot, and I know we can talk about this topic all day long, especially with all of you who are just wonderful and knowledgeable. Is there anything that you want to tell that hasn't been covered that's really critical to our viewers today? While you're thinking, I kind of started off, and I think I mentioned it already, but it's something that I just can't help myself. At PACE, why do you want to be a lawyer? And why PACE? Those are the two questions you should answer. And on top of what's already been said, why PACE and why do you want to be, and why do you want to be a lawyer? And how is PACE going to help you achieve your goal?
Yeah, I like that. And I usually say that too. And I throw in one more. Why do you want to be a lawyer right now? Right? Because every admission cycle will admit our cap of law students every year. And we can always counter argument. Your argument about why you want to be a lawyer is, well, why now? Why not get them later? Maybe next year, maybe a year from now, 2 years, they'll apply, they'll come back. So make it a priority also to include why now. So that way we know, hey, this person is super serious and ready presently. So I think that's always important to include too.
I would go ahead and now the biggest thing, with so many sources of information, in all aspects of the law school admissions process, but especially in this one, I always tell people just be careful with how many opinions you take from different sources on this. Obviously we repeated it a lot here. Ask us, talk to us. Especially if you've targeted, these are the schools that I'm going to apply to, or I'm interested in. Reach out to them and see what they offer on the more direct advice. But just be careful on how many voices you let in, whether it's online resources, for alumni that you're talking to, or lawyers that you may know or may not know, or even law students that you knew graduated from your school. Again, same like alumni, they don't necessarily know why they got into law school either. Or anyone really that tells you, especially in the age of influencers that we're in, anyone that says, if you do it this way, you're going to get into these schools like I did. That's not necessarily true. That may have worked for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean it applies to everyone, because everyone is their own person, individual situation and circumstances. And that's how we review them. We look at you as an individual. We don't compare you to other people. When I'm reviewing a file, I'm just looking at this person and this person's circumstances. And so just be careful with how many voices you let in, because right now the most important one, especially in your personal statement, is yours. And that's the one we want to focus on.
In all excellent points, I think I would add that your application as a whole to law school it should be a life-changing event for you. If it's not a life-changing event, you didn't do it right. I'm just saying it, because I think it's really important for you to go into this process and have an acceptance or offer of admission confident that you can do this program, because confidence has a lot to do with it. You're going to be nervous, but confidence has a lot to do with it. So I put it in context. If you're going to go to a wedding, are you going to wear shorts and flip-flops? Not unless it's on a beach, but generally no. So you have to attend to every detail of your outfit that you're going to a wedding with. So why don't you give your law school application equal substance? So first of all, call the law school, look at a timeline, map it out a year out, and give yourself a good chunk of time to do your LSAT, do a proper personal statement, get your proper recommenders in order, get pinstripes with your resume, y'all. Pinstripes, man, and these kind of little details, do they stand out? They stand out in as much as you want them to stand out. But if you do it and you do it correctly and you take the time, it will stand out. So it's got to be a life-changing experience for you, for the sole purpose of you coming into law school and having good energy that will get you through law school and through the bar, because that's the goal, folks. Cool.
So I'm gonna end with three words, or three, yeah, I guess three words that I think summarizes what you've discussed, all three of you, and that is preparation, authenticity, and excellence. So to all our viewers, keep that in mind as you are drafting your personal statements. Remember to call the schools. Thank you, Josue. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Eddie, for being here today. Thank you to all our viewers. Again, don't hesitate to call. We are here to help you. We want to make sure you're successful, and we look forward to meeting you, hopefully, in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. And you are excellent.
Thank
You
you.
are.